Coming to you from the capital Jakarta, Indonesia. You are watching Special Dialogue here on TV Our World with me, Rahmat Idris. We are going to delve deep into the diplomatic and bilateral relations of the Republic of Indonesia and Singapore. And this is our Special Dialogue. Well, the Republic of Indonesia and Singapore have long enjoyed such harmonious relations, be it in diplomatic and relations and also bilateral relations dating back to 57 years, touching across some of the most fundamental aspects pertaining to both countries, which includes economy and trades, education, military and defense, as well as tourism. And we're here today to explore more ways to further nurture and foster these relations and also see it grow and flourish even more in the coming future. And to get us up to speed with these matters, I am extremely honored to be joined in these conversations by the Ambassador of the Republic of Indonesia to Singapore. Joining me all the way from Singapore, His Excellency Suryo Pratomo. Ambassador Tommy, it is so good to see you again, sir. You were seated right there. We last spoke during the celebrations of Indonesia's independence. You were wearing beautiful Indonesia's traditional attire. And thank you again for making the time for TV Our World today.
With my pleasure, Rahmat.
Ambassador Tommy, I'd like to get up to speed with what's really the matter of discussions here for our special dialogue, which is the highlights of the relations between Indonesia and Singapore. 57 years, correct me if I'm wrong, is quite a number for one of the closest allies, the closest countries located geographically to Indonesia. Bring us up to speed, Mr. Ambassador, to some of the most significant highlights of our relations and aspects that we are truly proud of pertaining to the relations of Indonesia and Singapore.
If we look back in 1965, Rahmat have already mentioned that we have very bad relationship, and at that time we know that race the untrust between the two countries. But like the President Prabowo Subianto mentioned, when he delivered a speech at the Shanghai Dialogue last year, that President Prabowo is mentioned that Indonesia is implementing that we call a good neighbor policy. And Indonesia and Singapore is trying to revive and to build the good relationship between the two countries, and now I think the significant relationship between the two countries and improving very well, and now trust and confidence between the two countries also arise. So, for example, in inaugurated of President Prabowo, Prime Minister Lawrence Wong, one of the leaders who attend the inauguration. And next week, the Prime Minister Lawrence Wong also will be the first head of state, head of government who have a state visit to Indonesia and will be met with the President Prabowo and also Vice President Gibran, and to what we call to foster our relationship. That's why I can say that the relationship between the two countries now is very good shape and improving.
Right. I'd like to touch first on one of the most fundamental aspects of our bilateral relations, which is the economic and trade, Mr. Ambassador. Allow me to just sort of unveil the statistics. For the first quarter of 2024 alone, we are touching nearly $9 billion worth of investments from Singapore into Indonesia. Second quarter, nearly $5 billion, which is a 22-point-something% rise year on year on that alone. Signifying solidifying a very strong economic foundations between the two countries, and notably being the biggest investors into Indonesia. So what more can you tell us in details about these numbers, Mr. Ambassador?
Yes, Rahmat, I think Singapore is aware that Indonesia is a big country and very potential. So that's why in the last 10 years, Singapore became the biggest investor for Indonesia. And for this year, until the third quarter, I think the number of the investment from Singapore to Indonesia have around more than 15 billion US dollar. So total in the last 10 years, in Singapore investment to Indonesia is more than 75 billion US dollar.
Yeah.
So I think this is the signal that Indonesia is very attractive place for the Singapore businesses. So that's why so many Singapore businesses now also come to Indonesia and trying to find the opportunity. Next week, I will be accompanied the Malay Singapore Association, Businesses Association, to visit Indonesia and to trying to find the opportunity of Indonesia in trade balance between the two countries.
Mr. Ambassador, being the largest investors into Indonesia, walk us through some of the biggest aspects, sectors that Singapore is highly keen to interest in our country.
At the moment, I think the green energy is one of the very interested by Singapore businesses. So I think this year, when we have the forum in Jakarta, Indonesia and Singapore have agreed, Indonesia especially agreed to export 4 gigawatt green energy to Singapore. So this is one area that why Singapore businesses very attractive to Indonesia. The second one in the manufacturing. So Singapore, as we know, have already granted by the President Jokowi in 2016 that we have a special industrial park dedicated for Singapore in Kendal. Yeah. And now around 2,000 hectares have already fully with the investment from Singapore, and that's why the government, local government in Kendal is trying to edit around 2,000 hectares more to attract investment in Singapore. But not only in Kendal, in many areas of Indonesia, Singapore businesses very attract and willing to invest in Indonesia. I think this morning, for the example, the Singapore ambassador in Indonesia visited Gresik with sample to look the opportunity that Singapore businesses can be invested in East Java. So I think still many areas that the Singapore interested, including in halal product and also for the SMEs.
Halal industry and tourism are indeed on the rise as of this moment, Mr. Ambassador. Your Excellency, before we close this very particular segment, I'd like to get your take on the new capital of Indonesia, Nusantara, which is a carryover from our previous administration's President Joko Widodo to now our current President Prabowo Subianto, meaning that I'd like to get your insights as whether or not the investments, some portions or rather of the investments from Singapore will be projected towards the ongoing projects of the new capital of Indonesia, Nusantara. Will that be something that Prime Minister Lawrence Wong will be put on the table later on during his state visit to the country, in your opinion?
2 years ago, Indonesian embassy in Singapore is trying to invite Singapore businesses to visit new capital. We want to give it the opportunity for Singapore businesses to see directly what was happened in the new capital. Seeing is believing. And around 104 Singapore businesses joined with us, went to new capital, and after the visit, around 24 letter of intent have already offered by Singapore businesses to authority of the new capital, and until now they are still waiting reply from the authority of new capital because they have still a problem with the land acquisition. For example, one Singapore company, Sembcorp, joined with the PLN. They have already developed 5 megawatt solar panel in new capital. As we know that the new capital will be the model of the green city of Indonesia, and all the energy must be coming from the green energy. The problem now is facing is how the land acquisition. Until now, the authority cannot be sure how Sembcorp can use the land in the new capital. So I think the problem is not coming from the investor. The problem is in our a problem, especially in the authority of new capital, how they can be settle the main problem, especially for the land acquisition in new capital.
Well, that's certainly all the details that we need to iron out in the near future. We'll have to take a quick break, Mr. Ambassador. Do stay with us. Special dialogue here on TVR World. We'll return in just a few minutes. Don't go anywhere. Hello, you're still watching Special Dialogue here on TVR World. We are still deep in conversation with the Ambassador of the Republic of Indonesia to Singapore, His Excellency Suryo Pratomo, joining me from Singapore. Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much for still being with us for these conversations. We're now moving on to our next segment of the Special Dialogue here, where I'd like to get your insights on a very crucial matter pertaining to the borders of Indonesia and Singapore, particularly the airspace. As we know, you mentioned it also very briefly at the beginning that the initial period of our relations was quite tense between Indonesia and Singapore. And back in 1995, the flight information region of FIR on both two very important outer islands of Indonesia near Sumatra had belonged to Singapore. And this year, March 2024, marked such a milestone when the realignment of the airspace of the FIR region back to Jakarta has been signed. What more can you tell us about these achievements that have been long negotiated by both countries?
Yes, I think we have three crucial agreements that have already stopped around 17 years since 2007. The first one is about the flight information region. The second one is the defense cooperation agreement, and the third one is extradition treaty. And we also very happy that in 2022, after we passing the very crucial moment for the pandemic COVID-19, I think the two leaders have agreed to sign to ink the agreement for the three crucial issues. And last year, this year, 2024, the Parliament have already ratified, and all the three agreement is fully implemented. For the FIR, the flight information region, the two countries has agreed, especially for the area for landing and takeoff for Changi. We are now together to control. So that's why the 10 Indonesian officers since March 2024, now they are posted in the Changi air traffic control. And they can also work together with the Singapore officer to control how the traffic for landing and takeoff around Changi. And Singapore have already agreed to give it back all the area surrounding the Natuna. So that's why for the sovereignty, now Indonesia have get all the things that we are need to implementing the UNCLOS 1982. So this is very significant for Indonesia. For the GA also, the two countries now working together in military to how to implement the specially training area, especially in once again in Natuna. And because the area surrounding the Natuna now have already totally changed, and that's why on July this year, the two officers from the Ministry of Defense Forces, they are sitting together and working how to once again to fix the area for the training ground for the Singapore. And for extradition treaty, now we are working together how to implement especially what that Indonesia need for the fugitive who probably stay in Singapore. So I think with the three agreement, at the moment, we don't have any barrier how to improve our relationship between the two countries.
Well, Ambassador Tommy, on the note of the defense cooperations, just September this year, another sessions of joint military drill took place between Indonesia and Singapore. And this is something that has become a tradition for over 36 years between Indonesia and Singapore's in terms of sharing practices in military and also defense. So what more can you tell us about the adoption of military technologies between Indonesia and Singapore, particularly the two regions' contributions towards the regional peace, as we're now entering periods where global communities are questioning ASEAN's participations in, I don't know, South China Seas and Myanmar conflicts? How important do you think the cooperations and defense of Indonesia and Singapore will contribute to address all of these challenges in the regional peace?
I think, Rahmat, ASEAN at the moment is the safest and also fairly peaceful region in the world. After we have the conflict in Ukraine and also the tension in the Taiwan Strait and also what was happened in the Middle East, I think all the world is seeing the ASEAN is the most safest and the peaceful region. So that's why the 10 ASEAN countries, 11 with the Timor-Leste, have agreed to maintain how to this region is still become the safest and the peaceful region in the world. Because this is very important for the 10 ASEAN countries to improve the quality of life of the people. We have around 600 million people living in this region in ASEAN, and our economy in the ASEAN is growing very well. So that's why, including the South China Sea, this is very pivotal line that we're trying to make it more safer and stable. So that's why collaboration between military, not only Indonesia and Singapore, but also with the others military in ASEAN is very important. Then all the ASEAN countries in the last meeting in Laos have already agreed how important this region and how all members of the ASEAN working together to once again keep this region become the safest and the peaceful region in the world. So if we can maintain the safe and the peaceful in this region, the investment will be coming here. And with investment coming here, the opportunity of the people to have opportunity to employ is increasing. And if the people have opportunity to have a job, they have opportunity to improve the quality of their life. So that's why I think why the military, especially in Indonesia and Singapore, they are working together, and I saw the relationship is very excellent. For the example, Rahmat, 2 weeks ago, we have diplomatic relationship for commemorating 79th military what we call the Armed Forces Days.
Yeah.
And the chief of Singapore Armed Forces attending the diplomatic relationship at an embassy. So this is the signal how Singapore look the important Indonesia, and they are trying to keep relationship, including in military, is going very well.
Very well said there. We have to take another quick break. Mr. Ambassador, do stay with us right here in Special Dialogue. We will be right back. And you are still watching Special Dialogue here on TVR World, coming to you from the capital, Jakarta, Indonesia. We are still deep in conversation with the Ambassador of the Republic of Indonesia to Singapore. Joining me all the way from Singapore is Excellency Suryo Pratomo. Your Excellency, Ambassador, thank you very much for staying with us. We have arrived upon the final segment of our conversations. I'd like to get your insights next up on the new administrations that Singapore has just seen a few months ago when Prime Minister then Lee Hsien Loong stepped down, and also now replaced by Prime Minister Lawrence Wong. And also Indonesia has seen a fair share of administration transitions from President Joko Widodo to President Prabowo Subianto. Rana, how do you see these new two administrations will sort of merge and shape the relations between the two countries in the future?
I think we are very glad that the approaches in the two countries is almost the same. Singapore also implementing that they call is continuity from the Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong to Prime Minister Lawrence Wong. It is also the same thing. When a transfer of transition from President Joko Widodo to President Prabowo, also we use the theme of continuation.
Yeah.
So that's why one thing is very interesting, Rahman. This year, Indonesia become the host of the Leaders Retreat. As you know, that Indonesia and Singapore every years we have a Leaders Retreat and exchange between as a host every year. The most interesting that, and the last Leaders Retreat in Bogor Palace, not only that update, not only between the existing leader, between Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong and also with the President Joko Widodo, but at that time also President Joko Widodo invited President-elect Prabowo Subianto and Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong invited the next Prime Minister Lawrence Wong. And the four of leaders sitting together. This is a symbol that Indonesia and Singapore is not only continuing the policy in the countries, also the relationship between Indonesia and Singapore. This is once again the symbol that Indonesia and Singapore is the both countries is realized how important Indonesia and Singapore and how important we have a very close relationship. So once again, why Singapore become the first country will have a state visit to Indonesia next week? It's because Singapore, from the beginning, fully understood that how Indonesia is important for Singapore, and also Indonesia also understand Singapore is very important for Indonesia.
Ambassador told me this month alone, a very prestigious event of Indonesia-Singapore Business Forum took place here in Jakarta. And I've read the reports that you yourself personally had met with our Deputy Minister of Trade, Jerry Sambuaga, His Excellency Jerry Sambuaga. Can you tell us some of the most significant outcomes of this forum, meaning that we are trying to elevate business opportunities and cooperations between the two countries involving business-to-business deals here. What more can you tell us about that prestigious event and its outcomes?
We have made around 4 times the Indonesian-Singapore Business Forum, 3 times in Singapore and 1 time in Jakarta. And the last business forum that we set up in the middle of the trade expo in Indonesia, it showed that once again, the willingness of Singapore businesses to invest in Indonesia. They want to know more about Indonesia. Because once again, even many Singaporeans know about Indonesia, but their information about Indonesia is still limited. They just only know about Jakarta, they just only know about Yogyakarta or Bali.
Yeah.
Actually, Indonesia is not only Jakarta, Yogyakarta, and Bali. Indonesia is very huge.
Yeah.
And opportunity, especially in the eastern part of Indonesia, is a lot can be explored. But the problem for Singaporeans, they are very limited, have information about the opportunity in the eastern part of Indonesia. Yeah. So that's why we are at the embassy is trying to set up a business forum. We are inviting the Singapore businesses. We bring all the Indonesian policymakers, and every time we have a business forum, 3 times in Singapore, and the pack of the Singapore businesses attend. Yeah. The last event in Singapore, around 500 Singapore businesses attend our business forum. Why? Once again, because the speaker that we are invited is very credible one, and the minister who handle for the economic affairs. And the second one, there are no exactly Indonesia with 280 million people, with the huge market, yeah, with the young population, and also with the country with the economic growth average in the last 10 years is 5%. This is a very rare in the world that any country can be keep steady about the economic growth. So that's why the opportunity is there. The Singapore businesses is willing to know more about Indonesia, and they are ready to invest in Indonesia. The last thing, Rahmat, that we must be understood, in Singapore is now become the financial hub in this region. You know how many assets handled by Singapore at the moment? 5 trillion US dollars. So if we can attract 1% of 1 trillion or 4 trillion US dollars, this is very huge to develop and can push Indonesian economic growth. So that's why we are, especially in the embassy, is trying to do more about how to set up the business forum. And every 3 months, Rahmat, at an embassy, we have the program that we call the Indonesian Update, to once again to give it more information about where the opportunity in Indonesia, what kind of businesses that we can offering, yeah, and what kind of new regulation that Indonesia implementing. So that's why we must, and we're trying to keep more frequent and regular to give it more information about Indonesia, and hopefully the investment from Singapore will be increasing and give benefit for the Indonesian.
And certainly all the cooperations and particularly in cultures and educations and research can continue to be expanded between the two countries. Thank you very much, Ambassador of the Republic of Indonesia to Singapore, Your Excellency Suryo Pratomo. Ambassador Tommy, thank you very much for this illuminating conversation.
My pleasure, Rahmat.
And that concludes our special dialogue here on TVI World. I'm Rahmat Idris. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.